So today's session, my name is Shazia Khan, and today's session we're going to be doing a tutorial. Is that right? Do you know? So
Yeah.
we'll go through the learning outcomes quite quickly, and then we'll go on to the assignment discussion.
Okay.
So the unit that we're doing is the supporting teaching and learning level 3, and it's understanding how to safeguard children and young people. And we've got 5 learning outcomes. So I'm going to go through them quite quickly because they're quite big learning outcomes, each one.
So
Um,
will I be sent a recording afterwards?
yeah, you will. So the recording will go automatically to the UK Varsity, and then you'd get the recording as well. Okay. If
Okay,
there's
thank
any
you.
questions throughout the session, I like it to be an interactive session where you can ask me questions around the area and we can discuss things. It's just that due to the length of it, normally these are
That's
like
very
1 hour
dense.
sessions, but it's a quick tutorial with the 5 learning outcomes and then the assignment discussion.
Okay.
Okay, so the first learning outcome we're looking at is learning outcome 1, which is to understand legislation, guidelines, and policies and procedures for safeguarding children and young people. And that's really important. And a little bit about the unit. I've told you it's a level 3 certificate, understanding to safeguard, and there's 5 learning outcomes. And each one will be discussed separately, and you will have access to these on Moodle. So all the stuff that we go through today, you will have access to them on Moodle. And we'll go into what we expect in this learning outcome. So we're looking at the different policies, guidelines, and procedures for safeguarding children. Why do you think, when we look at these policies, why do you think there's a need for having these policies in place for children and young people?
Well, because they're vulnerable and
Yeah,
usually need protection and guidance from adults,
yeah,
and for sort of the Equality Act, we need to make
yeah,
sure that's available to all children
yeah.
are treated similarly.
Yeah, it's really important because um, not just in the education field, in any sort of field, you need to have safeguarding policies and legislation in place. Even, for example, even as a business, you need legislation in place to protect individuals and protect yourself as well. And it's really important to identify these elements of it. Safeguarding them from any sort of harm, or ensuring that they're in a safe area as well, and make sure that the child, you are following the legislation in place. So, what is safeguarding is the first one, and as it says, safeguarding is protecting someone's health, well-being, and human rights, and enabling them to, be free from any sort of harm or risk, and any sort of abuse as well. Because sometimes when a child is really, really quiet, they may be going through something that you don't know, as a member of staff. So it's really important to try to, identify these concerns, and try to make sure that, these elements are covered when it comes to you as a staff member as well. It's really important for you as a staff member to make sure that, you have, identified any sort of risks or any safeguarding issues. Now, I work in the education field. I've been teaching for 18 years, and I've seen a lot of things in my time which, is difficult sometimes to address because young people don't want to open up. Why do you think young people don't want to open up when it comes to safeguarding issues?
Probably afraid.
Yeah, yeah. And also, things like I deal with a lot of students that, well, I don't predominantly deal with them. I'm on a committee that deal with FGM, and some of the students won't even tell you that they're going, or the parents are taking them. So it is a safeguarding issue that you have to kind of address yourself, but it's quite difficult if you're not being told or anything. And it's again because the person's vulnerable. We have 4 nations within the UK: is England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and obviously they each has its own legislation. It has its own guidance, and we'll go through them a little bit. So you've got a little bit of an idea, but predominantly we'll concentrate on England itself, okay, and how it's managed by the UK and Parliament, whereas the Scottish is managed by Scottish Parliament. Wales is managed by the Welsh Government, and Northern Ireland is by the Island Assembly as well. So Children Act 1989, really important piece of legislation. And this legislation is vital in the UK laws because it keeps the child safe and protects their well-being. And it also states that a child's well-being must always come first. So it's paramount to everything in all decisions being made. And Section 17 has a duty on local authorities to find and support children in need, things like, disabled children, anyone that needs any sort of extra help to, grow up. And then you've got Section 47, which looks at councils having the power to investigate if they think a child's unsafe or if the child is at significant harm. And these powers have been given to the council and local authority to make sure that, that children are safe, because it's really, really difficult to make sure that, sometimes children are safe. And there have been cases where the local council and the local authorities and social services have not followed the legislation in such a way. And we'll look at some of the case examples later on, which we'll see. So the first one, the next one is the Children's Act. Again, this was passed mainly because of the death of Victoria Clembe. Have you heard of the facts of that case? Do you know Victoria
I don't
Clembe?
know in detail, but I do. I
Yeah,
remember this.
yeah, and it was that this was passed then. So it was looking more into inquiries and local authorities and forces agencies to kind of keep cooperating with each other to keep children safe. And in this case, it was a failure of multi-agency working together. So there was a need for all this, in regards to it. And Section 10 gave a duty on local authorities to cooperate to improve children's well-being. Again, Section 11 looked at wider agencies to ensure that they have regard for the safeguarding and well-being of that child. Then we have the Education Act 2002, Section 175, which places a legal duty on local authorities, governing bodies of maintained schools, further institution in England and Wales to ensure that functions are carried out with a view to safeguarding, promoting children, welfare of children, and they have a legal duty to create, implement, and maintain effective arrangements for children to keep them safe. And they have a statutory guidance by the government to shape local policies in place as well. So making sure that, there's not ineffective safeguarding in place, and effective safeguarding should be taken into account. Then we have the Children's Act, Children's and Families Act, which is actually 2014. So it's a kind of new piece of legislation that reformed the services for vulnerable children, including, SEND, because before it wasn't into much into the acts, but they've included SEND and people that have SEND and work-life balance, introduced education, health and care plans in place to speed up things like adoption processes and stuff. It makes sure it identifies any sort of needs of the child, and it's making sure that they have given enough rights to that individual, because them children that had SEND needs before this were not required, were not given that much support. So an act had to be introduced. Then we have the Children and Social Work Act 2017, and this focuses on improving support for looked after children, reforming local safeguarding partnerships and regulating social workers. It sets out these core rules for local authorities to act in best possible parents for the children in care. And it also promotes this educational outcomes for adopted children. So it really tries to strengthen and reform the social work profession, because there've been lots of discrepancies, and there's been lots of cases where the social workers have been incompetent and not performed their duties properly. Then we've got the Equality Act, and the main act for everything. Most businesses relate to this, but this is an act that identifies any sort of equality between individuals, provides equality. So, and it covers 9 personal characteristics, which are things like age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage, civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, and sexual orientation. And these are protected characteristics, and it's really unfair to directly discriminate against anyone or indirectly. Do you think this is used not just in schools but everywhere?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, it should be, shouldn't it, really?
Yeah.
It should be used because, there are places of work that, discriminate against, people that have, of maybe a higher age, they'd want younger generation, people on the basis of disability, and they don't promote it. So, yeah, this is quite famous, quite a popular act that is used predominantly everywhere. We've got the Counter-Terrorism Act, which again was a new one in 2015, and it was introduced to prevent duty, border passport seizures, and any sort of counter radicalization. So, known as prevent, trying to prevent, pursue, protect, and prepare. So, trying to make people in schools identify, if there's any sort of extremism, whether they are trained and stuff. That's why it's really important that you get this training done when you're at work as well. Then we have the FGM Act 2003 and Modern Slavery Act 2015. Now, the FGM 2003 makes it illegal for anyone in the UK and abroad to perform any sort of FGM, so like cutting themselves or someone else. And I do know, because I'm on the committee for FGM, I do know over 20,000 girls go over from the UK every year. It's quite a big amount, isn't it, really? Um, and there is predominantly younger generation that do go over. And this is where the parents will take them over. It's illegal in this country, and there are pledges that have been done in Bradford and Nottingham to make it, zero tolerance in these kind of areas. And predominantly children are taken on holiday, and they are, their parents would get the FGM performed on them. Then we've got the Modern Slavery Act 2015. Again, it's to do with offences for holding people in forced labour, servitude, and any sort of modern slavery offences as well, or exploiting them. And this is a big thing at the moment, sexual exploitation, slavery, and people are getting sentenced for this. Both these frameworks and these acts are there to protect and shield vulnerable women and children from any sort of harm and control. And, the courts and the authorities have the right to sue people. And obviously, it's a criminal offence, penalise them as well. We've got the new act as well, a really important act. Why do you think they had to introduce this act on Online Safety Act? Why do you think there was a need to bring it in, especially for children?
Well, just with the sort of the explosion of social media and
Yeah,
handheld
yeah,
devices.
yeah. It's really hard to sit in a room, Christine, for your children to be sat there and they're all on the phone. There's no sort of communication, and it really places a duty on schools and things to protect children, from any sort of content, illegal content, inappropriate, any sort of harmful content. And they've introduced the strict age verification as well, and I think that's really interesting. I think it's quite a good thing that the government have introduced that. And obviously, the whole point is, things like sexual abuse. It may be child grooming. children are groomed up there. I've seen loads of documentaries where children have been groomed by adults, um, but not knowing that they are adults. Journalistic content. It's the whole point of it is there it places a legal duty on people to, protect these individuals and especially young children. We've got the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, 1989, and it was adopted in 1989 in November, and it sets out civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights of every person under the age of 18, and making it mostly ratified to human rights treaty in history. So it's anyone under the age of 18, and it obviously applies to every child, and the best interest of the child concern when it comes to the UN Convention of the Rights of Children. We then have the Working Together to Safeguard Children. Again, Working Together to Safeguard Children is a department of education published Working Together, and it replaces the 2018 edition. And it outlines statutory duties for multi-agencies to safeguard children and collaborates across England to protect individuals under the age of 18. And it looks at strengthening the leadership duties to mapping out the roles and responsibilities of local authorities and different organisations and working with parents and children. We've got the Keeping Children Safe in Education, KCSIE, and this is a guidance issued by the Department of Education and sets out legal duties schools and colleges must follow to safeguard children under the age of 18. And there's different frameworks, there's different parts to it, there's 5 parts to it, and they have annexes in place, and schools must follow this. And it's published and it's in statutory force, and the whole point of it is to safeguard any sort of information that all members must read, and make sure that each part has its different annexes, and make sure that everything is followed, and make sure that schools are following. Every school must read these and confirm this in writing as well, that they've read this. Again, safer DBS and recruitment is really, really important when you're recruiting someone to do a DBS, if they're suitable to work with children. You have the enhanced DBS, and that's really, really important. It takes a little bit longer than a normal DBS, but why do you think an enhanced DBS has to be done when working with children?
Just, I guess, because they're extra vulnerable, and there could be things people are doing more secretly.
Yeah. Do you remember that case recently? I can't even remember what it was, where they didn't do the advanced DBS and he killed them 2 girls.
Oh, that they'd adopted.
Yeah.
Very shocking.
His DBS needs to be really, really, really stringent when it comes to things like that, especially when you're, engaging in some sort of activity where you're working with children. It's really vulnerable. It's going to be rigorous. The interviewing process has to be rigorous. It has to make sure that children are safe, even interviewing people. Your applications have to be detailed. You have to have a structured face-to-face interview. And in the interviews, you need to make sure that you're focusing questions around, children protection, and, making sure that your references are rigorous as well, because they are the one things that, some employers need to make sure that they're looking at things more rigorously when it comes to preventing anyone working with children that are unsuitable. Early intervention before crisis. So when we look at early intervention before any sort of crisis, it's vital to approach it across through the safeguarding framework. So it provides timely support to children, young people and families where they need it, make sure that it meets the thresholds. And schools have a key role to make sure that, they spot any sort of any sort of emerging concerns or anything, it is your role, to identify this. It's difficult sometimes, working children, but you need to make sure that if there's any sort of patterns of the child being late, or making sure that, if they've got any mental health issues, if they, have not eaten, any sort of poverty, housing instability, these need to be identified beforehand. Threshold for safeguarding action. So there's a threshold and there's a continuum of framework, and it identifies 4 levels as well. The first level is whether the children, where there's no additional needs, and it's a universal needs, and it's children are safe, healthy, and making good progress. And level 2 is universal plus, which is looking at children have low level of emerging vulnerabilities. Level 3 is targeted support, and here they will look at children who have multiple and complex unmet needs. And then level 4 is statutory specialist and support protection. So these are children who face acute risk, present severe welfare concerns, and qualify under Section 17 and Section 47 of the Children's Act 1989. We then go on data protection. Again, data protection is important in everything, mainly in schools in regards to it. It's important. It's one of the GDPR data protection, which is strict rules for organisations handling personal information, especially in schools, and the core data must be processed legally. Schools must be transparent and fair, and data must be that is collected must be clear, specified, and legitimate. And it must be up to date and it must be accurate. And there are special conditions in place which would apply to children, and make sure that the primary legal framework for this is to make sure that processing of the legislation and data is enforced properly. Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. We'll briefly go through each one. So Scotland, it's getting it right for every child, and this is a national policy framework designed to support the well-being of children and young people from birth up to the age of 18. And it provides a shared framework and language for public services, including health, education, social work, to work together. And it puts the child and their families in the centre of the decisions when making any sort of decisions, and make sure they are safe. We have the next one, which is Wales, which is Social Services and Wellbeing Wales Act, which is passed by the Welsh Government, and it changes how social care works for adults, children, and carers in Wales. And the law puts people at the centre of their care and gives them more control over their support they receive, and people make choices about their own care as equal partners. So it's quite a good act to have in place. In the next one is Northern Ireland, where you look at the cooperating to safeguard children and young people. And this act outlines overarching policy framework that outlines statutory, voluntary, faith, and community organisations must work together to protect children from any sort of harm, abuse, and exploitation. And it requires all groups working with people to share information and coordinate any sort of responses. So these are really important in the country. We have got local policies and procedures in place. Policies and procedures are really, really important in place. The school safeguarding policies is, again, it's there to protect children from any sort of abuse, prevent any sort of harm, health and development, and ensure any sort of safe care. And these are governed by, they are legal policies that have been put in place. If there's any sort of concerns or anything, they need to be looked at and implemented. And obviously, in regards to this, they have a designated lead that deals with all the safeguarding issues, which is the next slide, which is a designated safeguarding lead. And this is would be the school would have someone who's a designated safeguarding lead who is a member of staff, and who would be responsible for child protection, managing safeguarding concerns, and acting in the main point of contact for staff, parents, and outside agencies. Why do you think it's so important to have a designated safeguarding lead?
Well, I guess you need somebody who's having particular training, but also support.
Yeah.
that can
It's
sort of
very
know.
important because it's that one point of contact, isn't it, that you would go to.
So people know what to do.
Yeah,
They can,
because in a
or they
school,
can
this,
coordinate things with
yes,
the different parties.
yeah, because it's difficult, isn't it, Christine? If you have so many people that deal with it, everything's just going to go uphill, isn't it? So you might as well just have that designated person who deals with everything, makes contact with other organizations, and make sure that reports are done when it comes to things like this. So related policies, you have the statutory policies with safeguarding. So you've got statutory safeguarding and child protection policies, behaviour policies, anti-bullying policies, again related to bullying, attendance policies, making sure that you are putting in place any sort of attendance requirements. So if someone's late all the time, or if there's any elements of neglect, send again supporting needs of people with special needs, supporting pupils. And then you have non-statutory ones are staff's code of conduct, their professional boundaries, what they must follow, how they must implement things. And then you have online safety, what they can use online, whistleblowing, complaints policies, trips and education policies, and photography and consent policies, whether you can take pictures if you're doing anything, you need to make sure you are getting consent. So here's a case study, and this is how legislation shaped practice. And the case study was the case of Victoria Clem, the 8-year-old girl who died in February 2000 after months of horrific abuse at the hands of great aunt and the great aunt's boyfriend in London. She was seen by multiple professionals, social workers, police, doctors. Lord Lamming was appointed to chair a public inquiry, and because of the agencies, they failed to intervene or deal with anything. And Victoria, it led to her life going. And there were recommendations made because there were key failures in the Victoria Clem-based case. Agencies kept separate files and did not share vital danger signs when it came to. It was really sad case study, actually. It was really sad how it implemented and why things went wrong. There was no clear lead when it came to her, so there was no one that kept track of her safety. And there were missed chances because staff saw Victoria so many times but failed to listen or act, and workers focus on admin tasks instead of seeing the child. So yeah, it was quite upsetting, and they had a duty to work together and make sure that everything was dealt with when it came to Victoria Clem-based case. But it was sad how it was dealt with, and it lost her life. The ecological model of child maltreatment. So here they looked at the Yuri Bronfenben's ecological theory, which applied to safeguarding and conceptualizing child maltreatment, not as an isolated event, but as a result of complex interaction between a child and their multi-layered environment. So safeguarding professionals use this framework to identify any sort of risk factors, assess any sort of vulnerability, and put interventions in place. And he had 5 ecological systems in safeguarding. He had a micro system, the meso system, the exo system, the macro system, and the Corona system as well. And it was there to stop. The whole point of this framework was it stopped professionals from solely blaming parents for highlighting external pressures, and it ensured statutory risk assessments are taken into place. Reflective activity, which you can look at in your own time, and we can move on to learning outcome 2 now. Is there any questions on learning outcome 3, Christine?
No.
Okay. So let's go on to learning outcome 2. So stop sharing. So, I'm just going to share the next set of slides.
What time are you going for work?
Later, I'm having a Zoom call.
I think this is learning outcome 2. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Excellent. That is okay. So sorry. So understanding how to safeguard children and young people, and learning outcome 2 is to look at understanding why is this not moving? Maybe good to put it here. Yeah. So first learning outcome 2 is looking at the need to safeguard the centered child-centered approach and looking at partnership working and roles of organizations. Why do you think it's so important to have partnership working? Why do you think it's so important for them to work together?
So that information isn't missed or ignored.
Do you think information is missed?
I think it could be if one person saw something and just thought, oh, that's not so bad, then doesn't pass it on. Patterns are missed.
Okay, and do you think that impacts on the individual themselves?
Well, as I say, there's some cases where it's been shown, like the Victoria Climbié one.
Yeah.
When
what about do you remember the case of baby P as well?
The name is familiar, I can't remember the details.
Yeah. And there's another one of Sky, a little girl in West Yorkshire, where she was abused by her parents as well. So it was quite a serious case, and she was beaten badly by her mother and her partner. And in this case, every case has to be reviewed properly. And all the agencies must be involved to identify any sort of needs. So the next one is the scale of need for prevalence in data. So it's really important. Globally, more than 1 in 10 children and adolescents, equivalent to 293 million, live with diagnosable mental disorders. And that's people that needed protection and support. Over 50,000 children are in child protection plans at any time in England, and around 85,000 children are looked after. There'll be more that is not addressed. It's not it's not being taken into account, but there will be more out there that have not said that there's been any sort of elements of any data being published because of that. So there's quite a lot why we safeguard. So the moral and legal case children. So safeguarding is really important. It's very important for children and those that are vulnerable. And it's a moral and legal duty because children possess individual human rights which are distinct from adults or parents, and lack developmental capacity, and the legal standing to protect them from any sort of exploitation, any sort of abuse, or any sort of neglect. And the world around us, there's so much things happening that if we look at it morally, we have an independent human being. We have moral right to treat people with respect, and make sure that we shield the vulnerable. Legally, we have to follow the statutory legislation in place, Children's Act and the United Nations Rights of Convention, to make sure that everyone is protected, and we are intervening if there's any sort of harm or anything. We have a legal duty, and as the school, they have a legal duty to protect the safeguarding and put that child at an instance straight away. Factors that increase vulnerability. So, some children can be at higher risk due to interacting individual family, environmental issues. It could be exposure to any sort of abuse. And recognizing this is your professional awareness. You need to make sure you are able to recognize this. So you have age, which is babies and youngs, children under the age of 1, and that is statistically, that's quite a highest risk area. And then you've got people that are vulnerable, disabilities, people with physical disabilities, developmental disabilities. They're quite vulnerable, and they are, at another high risk as well. You have people that have behavioral issues, persistently crying, emotional, and you have preschool age as well. Unaccompanied asylum seekers are really vulnerable. Why do you think they are so vulnerable when it comes to unaccompanied asylum seekers, and they are children?
Well, there's they've got no adult to rely on. They might have a language barrier as well.
Yeah. And it's really, they're the ones that tend to get more exploited because they don't have anyone to kind of, like you said, they don't have this adult to look after them or support them. And they're in this kind of bubble where the next person that comes to them is that person that's going to be that savior in a way.
Yeah.
So I mean, for 12 years, I worked with asylum seekers, and I dealt with their asylum cases, and the vulnerability for, and this is not just children, but women. It's very hard, and they're very trusting in some ways, because they feel like everyone's there to help them, but that's not always the case, because then they get exploited as well. And it is an area of concern as well. Children in poverty, where the parents don't have any money. Again, children with families that's parents are abusive, domestic violence, any sort of parental illnesses or anything. The cost of not safeguarding, so individuals' cost is the child's life. Failure to carry out this with, is that the child is not protected, and it affects everything, the exploitation. And it has to be, that the child is protected. And it could be things like abuse and neglect. It destroys the families. It could be community cost. It could be the opportunity that the child, financial strain, breakdown of relationships. It could be social cohesion, mental capacity, mental illnesses. So it's a big thing, is that in regards to it. The next one is assessment criteria 2.2, where we look at the impact of the child-centered approach. And this approach is an approach that is not just an educational philosophy. It's a structural framework that shifts the child from the passive recipient of care or instruction to an active agent in their own development. So it requires specific measurable practices to be put in place, and it's a child-centered approach. It's looking at the developmental needs of that child, their interests and their voice as well. And in their core principles, firstly, to listen to the child, see the world from the child's perspective, include the child appropriate in decisions, and make the child's welfare paramount. It's always going to be the child's welfare that we've got to take into account, and make sure that the child is safe, and we are putting this child at the center of everything. What changes when your child-centered approach works? So a child-centered approach is looks at listening to their children's voice. There's better decisions in place. You are taking into account the child's factors, what they are saying. You are listening to them. It's really important that the child feels that they are being listened to. There's a meaningful consultation with the child, and they feel that they're being listened to, and it's all child-led. So, and this also improve outcomes as well. And the teaching assistant, if they listen to them, the child feels more, feels like they are being heard. It's really important. The voice of a child in safeguarding, sometimes, it's really hard to get anything out of a child, but sometimes, the child is the voice of the child is one of the most used phrases in safeguarding. and it's where you actively listen and observe and include a child's feelings and views, and what is how they are being affected. Um, genuine child voices. Then you have weak child voices, children with disabilities. So you're listening to them. It may be that it might be their body language, verbal cues. It may be that they have changes in their mood. You have to put in place where you are creating a safe environment for that child to make sure they can speak with you alone, because it's really, really important. Because sometimes children are so scared to speak and say anything, that they won't even talk about what's happening in their house. So you have to try to make them feel more comfortable. You've got the theoretical framework, which is the Lundy model of child participation, and this was someone called Laura Lundy in 2007, and she offered four conditions that must be met for child participation. And this model actually provides a way of conceptualizing Article 12 of the UNHCR, and this is intended to focus on educational decisions. And the four elements were space, which is the children must be given space, inclusive opportunities to form and express their own views. Voice, where the children must be facilitated to express their views. And then audience, which is the view must be listened to. And then influence, the view must be acted on. And these are Lundy's models that we used in regards to it. Partnership AC assessment criteria 2.3, partnership working in context. So here we're looking at partnership or working definition. So partnership working is an intentional structured cooperation between two or more organizations. So it can be different organizations that share their goals, that have predominantly the same goals and the same values. So it could be things like, when it comes to children, you're working together in regards to with CAMS. It may be social services, it may be the police. And it's so important that these lot work together, because they don't want any other issues, such as any other cases like Victoria Clembe, where they were not being heard and they didn't talk to each other and they put it aside. So it's really, really important that they work together. The three statutory safeguarding partners: local authority, we have the integrated care body, which is the ICB, and then we have the chief officers. So it could be the police, typically a designated safeguarding officer. And these three partners need to really work together to make sure that they are responsible for any sort of local multi-agency child protection arrangements, and make sure that they are representing their organisation to make sure everything is safe in place for the child. Barriers to effective partnership working, and there are barriers in place to make sure, it may be things like poor communication, it may be cultural differences, that the different professional cultures. Resources is a big one, shortages in time, funding, or any sort of limited resources as well. Misunderstanding, lack of trust, another one. Personality, like humans, it depends on individuals, have a staff turnover. Geographical boundaries may be another one as well. Lack of trust is a big one, where the transparency is when people relying on each other. Information sharing, the 7 golden rules of information sharing is regarded as the rule 1 is the remember that the Data Protection in GDP Act. Rule 2, be open and honest with the individual. Rule 3, seek advice from practitioners if you doubt any sort of information sharing. Rule 4 is, where possible, share information and consent. Rule 5, consider safety and well-being. Base your information sharing decisions on consideration safety and well-being. Rule 6, necessary, proportionate and relevant. And Rule 7 is keep a record of your decision. It's really, really important to keep records of everything. AC 2.4, roles of organisations involved. So we've got the first one, Children's Social Local Authority, and they act as a statutory lead agency for children protection in England under the Children's Act 1989 and the Children's Act 2014, and they operate alongside statutory partners like the police, and they hold the responsibility to coordinate, safeguard, lead investigations into significant harm and manage protection plans for children. And Section 47 leads formal investigations if there's reasonable cause of child suffering. The police, again, really important body that works with safeguarding children, excuse me, to tackle any sort of protection. And these are police are involved in regards to any sort of issues around serious child protection cases. Be it anything to do with exploitation, or be it anything to do with prevent or anything like that, they have to be involved. The health services, these are involved when it comes to any sort of element of a safeguarding partner. If it's the ICB has a responsibility to put in place school nurses in place so that they check, immunise and look at healthcare plans for their child. Community paediatricians, general practitioners, health visitors, CAMS, again, for mental health in children, emergency A&E, where they suspect anything, they need to liaise with safeguarding. And that's happening quite well, actually, where children are being referred to social services from NHS. School and education services make sure that they are seeing the child 5 times a week, make sure that the educational needs are put in place, and they have a daily track of the child, and make sure their statutory duty that they safeguard and promote the welfare of the child. You have voluntary and third sector organisations who have a key role in making sure that they are in regards to focusing on the child's welfare. And you've got the NSPCC, which is the largest child charity, which looks at guidance to schools, Barnados, Women's Aid, Place to Be, Action for Children, Supporting Children, Victim Support, NCCP Childline, and that's for anyone under the age of 18 that could ring and get any sort of information around any sort of abuse, neglect, or anything like that. You then have LADO, which is the local authority designated officer, which manages allegations and concerns against any child aged 16 or over who works with volunteers and children. Every local council must employ a local authority designated officer to provide advice to everyone, and obviously make sure that they are protecting the safeguarding any sort of children. You then have the multi-agency safeguarding hub, which is MASH, which is a local team that brings together safety staff from children's social care, the police, health and social care into one secure unit, and they share information quickly to assess any sort of risks of vulnerable children and adults and decide on the best support for them. You then have the child protection conferences, and this is where family members and key professionals share information, decide if a child is at risk or significant harm, and they include parents, carers, independent chair, social workers, police and other healthcare to make sure that their purpose is that child is, if they're at continuing risk, and try to make sure they put a plan in place for that child. The case study you could read in your own time, which is about Harrison, a year 7 multi-agency response, and the theoretical science to it as well. And there's your role as a TA, teaching assistant. So your role is to make sure that you collaborate closely with the teachers, and you make sure that the child is, you are the ears and eyes of that partnership with the children, because you are attending them, supporting them, and you are communicating with other staff members to make sure that you are consistent with what you are saying, and also maintaining confidentiality. Confidentiality in safeguarding is really important, but it means it's not absolute secrets, because sometimes it's really important that you are sharing the responsibility information. The core rules that that safeguard always comes before secrecy. So you don't always need to consent to share details if a person is at risk, and information is always shared with if any child is at risk as well. And it's the whole point of, protecting a child from any sort of serious harm or any sort of crime as well. So this is a reflective activity you could look at in your own time, and there's further reading for learning outcome 2 with case study and reports and recommended websites, which is available on Moodle for you. Okay, so this is learning outcome 2. Is there any questions on learning outcome 2?
Nope.
Nope, thank you. Let me go on to sharing learning outcome 3. Sorry. If you have any questions, just ask, okay?
Yeah.
Learning outcome 3. They are quite lengthy. They are quite lengthy slides, so I'm just gonna kind of go through what I can with you. Is that okay?
Yep.
And then you've got more of it when it comes to reading it. Let me just have a look. Got the wrong one here. Okay, so this is learning outcome 3. Can you see that? Yeah, Stream?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is to understand the need to ensure children and young people's safety and protection in the learning environment. So we'll be looking at AC 3.1, which is protection from harm in learning and environment, AC 3.2, which is online risks and consequences, AC 3.3, which is reducing online risks, and AC 3.4, which is protecting yourself as staff. Why safety and protection matters in learning. So, we end up looking at why it's so important to make sure a child can be protected. We must make sure that they cannot learn effectively unless they feel safe and protected. And when a child feels threatened or scared, their brain shifts to survival mode. So we kind of need to make sure that there's emotional safety in place before they trigger this emotional survival mode that they go into. And we look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs when it comes to children, and this places a safety second from the base, so above psychological needs and below love, belonging, esteem. So in schools, for example, unaddressed safety threat triggers chronic stress, looking for the children's focus on survival. So there's 5 levels of that in regards to it. They have the psychological level, which is the basic life needs, safety, physical security, belonging, friendships, esteem, respect, and self-actualization. AC 3.1, we look at the protection from harm in the learning environment. Here we look at the element of types of harm schools must protect against. So schools have a legal and a moral duty to safeguard children from any sort of harm. They must protect students from physical, emotional, sexual abuse, any sort of bullying, online harms, external criminal exploitation, any sort of harm they must protect them from. So you've got the physical harm, you've got the which is hitting, shaking, or any sort of corporal punishment. You've got emotional harm, which is humiliation, emotional sexual harm, which is inappropriate touching or grooming or anything like that. Neglect, failing to have basic needs for the child, their medical needs, or not failing to feed the child as well. Online digital harm, cyberbullying, radicalization, exploitation to any sort of extremist material, systematic harm, lack of reasonable adjustments, and harm by staff as well, them not following the code of conduct and things like that. The legal duty is not an option in schools. You have a legal duty. They have an absolute legal duty. It's non-negotiable to safeguard children because the law treats student safety as a mandatory requirement, not a discretionary choice. So they have a duty of care to the child to make sure that all reasonable steps are put in place and there's no neglect or discrimination. They are following the Equality Act, and they are following the Children's Act and protecting the child from any sort of violence and abuse. The developmental impact of unsafe environments. What do you think a developmental impact could be for a child if the environment is not safe?
Well,
They don't feel safe.
if they're constantly feeling stressed, they're going to really struggle to learn anything
Yeah.
useful.
Do you think that happens a lot in schools? Or
I should think so.
yeah, yeah. Children have this constant fight, flight, freeze, kind of approach where they become attached and disrupted, and they have physical, it impairs their cognitive growth, and also increases their risk of forming like stable relationships as well. Their mental health, it has emotional impact on them as well, social impact. They become withdrawn. Children are really vulnerable. They store things in their head and then they don't always say things. So, it impacts on them quite a lot. Anxiety, depression, kind of, moving away from that, they get quite nervous, neurological issues as well. Assessment criteria 3.2, risk of online activity and digital device. I think this has a huge impact, and I've seen this where children, are struggling this because they have, the fact that with the modern world that we live in, it's all online. So they get, if they're on online for 4 or 5 hours on their smartphone, they become virtually, phone based. And, there's elements of bullying and things like that, and obviously the screen time must be limited. Parents must be putting that in place, and it also the impact of the desire is defined on the individual's cognitive displacement. They don't parental controls. They need to put parental control in place. They do in schools, but also online at home as well. They need to be put in place. Some children are on their iPad 24/7. I mean, I don't know, from a young age, and it doesn't help their mental health as well. We've got the 4 C's of online risk. We've got content risk, which is exposure to any sort of illegal, inappropriate, or harmful material posted online. Then we've got contact, which is risks arising from interactive communication with other users or automated entities, which could be things like adult grooming and malicious actors posing as children. Conduct, which is actions and behaviors exhibited by individuals that cause or increase the likelihood of harm. Cyberbullying, commerce, financial and commercial exploitation risks encountered in digital space. So online gambling, it could be anything like that. And, it should be up to the school to make sure that children are protecting things like, sexting and self-generated images, because that goes around quite a lot now, where children are being sending images to maybe young other adults, and it goes around for cyberbullying. Content risks in depth, so pornography, you've got adult sexual predators out there as well, violence, graphic content, pro-eating disorder, self-harm, suicidal. It's really, really cyberbullying, extremists, like Islamic extremists, far-right extremism, misinformation, inappropriate advertising, gambling, and things like, creating fake accounts, exploitation of children, contact risks in depth. So you've got things like, online behavior where children acts. When a child, just an example for you, when a child is communicating online to another member, and becomes quite close to that member, and it's things like grooming and things, does the child become withdrawn, do you think, and changes their personality, the way they are, their act, their behavior? Do you think it changes a lot?
I suppose they could do if they're sort of
Yeah.
being groomed. They could be a bit secretive because the
Yes,
groomer could
yeah.
tell them not to tell anybody.
Yeah. It does become really secretive. They don't want you to touch their phone. County lines and exploitation is a big thing, like drug running and, recruiting vulnerable young people, radicalization. sextortion, sexing, which is then explicit images and things like that. And stalking and harassment is another one as well, which is quite a big one. Conduct risk cyberbullying, as we've spoke about, which is one that's self-generated indecent images. Again, you've got online hate, online fighting, hate speech. Then you've got contract commercial risks in debt. So gambling, it could be financial, it could be parents regularly reporting bills of, child apps that are being used, downloading, fraud, identity theft, cryptocurrency subscriptions, traps. Then you've got specific risks of digital mobile phones, so smartphones again, most significant risk profile, often private, parents check it, things like the location data must be on. Tablets often, shared with devices. Make sure you've got parental consideration when it comes to certain apps. Smart toys, connected, cameras, microphones, record things as a parent, a school, make sure they're switched off. AC 3.3, reducing online risks. We've got reducing risk from social networking, making sure that, you are putting things in place like software security settings, age limitations that they put in place, privacy settings, two-factor authentications, password managers, reporting tools, making sure your parental partnerships in place, privacy controls, recognizing any sort of scams or anything that are being reported, reducing risk from internet use, making sure that when it comes to the schools, you are channeling everything and you are safe searching, home filtering, age verification, make sure you have got passwords in place and software updates and screen times as well. Where to report online harm. So, children, parents, and teachers must report online harm immediately to trusted safety channels. So, for the schools, it's the DSL, designated safety lead, or for tutor, child exploitation and online protection. Report harmful content. You've got Childline as well. You've got things like the Mix. You've got revenge porn where you can report it, and then you've got the police as well that you can report it to. Safer Internet Day and Curriculum Work is a global event held on second Tuesday of February, coordinated to make sure it focuses on specific issues and make sure that it's online safety. So public-led it is, and it's parental engagement. Assessment criteria 3.4, how support staff can protect themselves, why self-protection matters. Why do you think it's so important in regards to staff protecting themselves?
Well, they could face allegations of abuse themselves.
Yeah, protecting yourself is really important, and because, it's allegations, it could be against the staff. It could be low-level concerns, professional boundaries. So you need to make sure, as a TA, you are the one who, or as a teacher, protects themselves as well. Professional boundaries is really important because, it's really important to limit yourself, and define what is, make sure you have read the policy around professional boundaries and you have put them in place. It should be clear, it should be ethical limits, and they protect emotional health, but you create this secure, predictable environment for both workers and the children. So it defines your role. So it's really important to have professional boundaries in place. Documentation protects you, so everything is documented. It's really important that every single interaction you have with the student, everything is documented, because it keeps everything safe and it makes sure that everything is noted and everything is in place, and use the school system and sign and date everything as well. Your online presence as a professional, everything means how you act and look on the internet. So your presence, it helps you, have this element of trust and make sure your platform is seen by parents, but privacy settings are put in place. Separate accounts, never add students as followers. People do that on Facebook, Instagram, things like that. Don't put in your photos of your family, and tag any students in as well, because that causes issues as well. I remember there was this one teacher at school in I can't remember where it was, and she was a model for Marks and Spencers, and she was a bikini model, and the students got pictures of her because she'd shared something, and that was they didn't see the end of that. So trying to not share anything as well is really important. Protecting yourself during off-site activities. Make sure you are your pupils in a less familiar environment outside. Make sure there's risk assessments done, pairing up where possible when it comes to residentials or any trips, personal care, so any sort of overnight contact as well with the child. Communication, use the emergency contact lines, don't give your personal lines, and any photos or anything that it needs to be taken off your personal device. Whistleblowing, raising concerns about colleagues. So this is about reporting workplace wrongdoing, or if there anyone that breaching anything. So it's a criminal offence to break the law. So make sure you are, if you suspect anyone that's inappropriate towards another child, or anyone under 18, you must report that and make sure it's reported properly, and you are raising these concerns as well with your manager. Case study there for you to have a look at, which is an online safety incident handled well. And then the theoretical framework is Livingston's 4Cs, which looked at the element of Sonia Livingston, 4Cs, which looked at content, the first one. Then you've got contact, conduct, and commercial. And these were the 4Cs that were used by Livingstone, and the element of that was to make sure that it retained any sort of exposure, inappropriate or harmful material, and this was the relationship between the recognizing online risks and recognizing and raising any issues as well. Staff safety online training, what to cover. So you've got staff safety needs to be put in place, online core cyber security, hygiene, phasing defences, making sure training is put in place, frequency at least when it comes to new risks, who delivers, usually the DSL, record keeping, evaluation, specific roles, and the peer-to-peer learning. Emerging risks to watch. Again, AI is a big one. ChatGPT, that's a big one. Scammers use fake audio, deep fake into images, artificial intelligence, sextortation, which is again teenage boys specifically. Incel, which again is the Andrew Tate stuff. Self-harming communities like Discord, crypto and gambling, eating disorder, and VR and metaverse. So it needs to be kept on top that these risks are personal, privacy, and everything is protected through that. There's a reflective activity there that you can look at in your own time, and further reading and resources, recommended websites, case studies, and resources you could read, and references there as well for learning outcome 3. So I'm just going to stop sharing learning outcome 3. Is there any questions you've got on learning outcome 3?
No.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go to learning outcome 4. Is so learning outcome 4 is to understand how to respond to evidence or concerns that a child or young person has been abused or harmed. And you've got AC 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.5 that we're going to go through. And when responding well matters, most adults working in schools encounter disclosure of abuse or harm at some point in their career. And the first adult, it's really important that you validate a child's feelings, make sure that they are protective. You are skilled to put in place all this protection, and children, almost like we said, never disclose anything. So it's really important you have these in place. 4.1, child protection within safeguarding. So safeguarding and child protection, the relationship between that is safeguarding and child protection are closely linked, but they're not the same thing. Child safeguarding is the broad, ongoing umbrella term for promoting children's welfare and preventing harm, whereas child protection is a specific subset focused on responding when a child is suffering at risk or any sort of significant harm. So in schools, safeguarding is built into every aspect of the curriculum and working together to children and making sure that the child is safe but struggling, maybe safeguarding concerns. The child protection process. So there's a process in place that needs to be followed when it comes to child protection. This key stage is the concern arises. Step 1, report to DSL. Step 3, DSL makes a decision and considers everything. Then step 4 is a referral to MASH. Step 5, strategy meeting. Step 6, section 47, investigation with the social care. Step 7 is initial protection conference. Step 8 is child protection plan put in place. And then step 9, de-escalation of depending on the progress. Assessment criteria 4.2, types of abuse and bullying. And there are 4 types. So we're going to look at the 4 types of different abuse. You've got physical, emotional, neglect, and sexual as well. So the first one is physical abuse. Includes things like hitting. It might be throwing or throwing a child. It could be elements of the scalding or poisoning, burning a child. It could be drowning or suffering suffocations, fabricated systems of deliberately inducing illnesses, age-related concerns, cultural concerns. Sexual abuse is any sort of forcing or enticing a child into any sort of activity that is non-preventative acts such as kissing, rubbing. Non-contact sexual abuse is involving children. It could be contacts like touching, assault, or penetration. Grooming, it could be inappropriate sexual communication. Non-contact, such as involving the child in any sort of photos or anything. Online sexual abuse, sharing any images. And sexual abuse is long lasting and it impacts on their mental health as well. You've got emotional abuse, which is persistent ill treatment. They've got severe and persistent adverse effects on the emotional development. So constant criticism, rejection. It could be, conveying that a child is worthless, saying you are not inadequate, you are stupid, things like that, that will impact on that child. Do you think emotional abuse has a huge impact on the child's mental health?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's quite sad, but emotionally it does affect them throughout their life. Things like bullying by adults, bullying by a parent, any sort of threats of harm or abandonment, it could be these kind of things, and they have a lifelong impact on the child's mental health. We've got neglect, which is again things like neglecting their psychological or physical needs. It might be food, it might be clothing, hygiene. A child could come to school and is not dressed properly, they may smell. Medical neglect, not giving the child missing their immunization. Emotional neglect, supervisory neglect. These are elements of neglect. Other forms of abuse, child exploitation, forced marriages, modern slavery. We've looked at elements of county lines, FGM. And then you've got bullying, which is a big one. It's a safeguarding issue. Intentionally repeated harmful behaviour, physical, verbal, or online, and it's a power and causes severe distress as well. You've got signs, symptoms, indicators of behaviour, recognizing concerns. So it's very difficult sometimes to recognize them, but some signs are recognizing safeguarding concerns mean spotting signs, It may be a change of the child's behavior over time. Listening to the child's words maybe suggest a person's, risk of harm. It may be their physical indicators. It could be, any sort of missed appointments. It could be, don't, things like children mask their experiences. Physical indicators could be things like the fact that they've got unexplained injuries. It could be bruises, it could be burns, skulls, multiple bruises, various fractures, uh, injuries, inconsistent, and then neglect indicators could be things like, persistent unwashed, that they smell, neglecting, poor hygiene, inappropriate clothing, hunger, that they're hungry all the time, tiredness, medical neglect, constant tired, making sure they've got no poor dental hygiene, things like that. Behavioral neglect indicators. So you've got things like um, emotional neglect, withdrawn, they're quiet, they're not, they're really quiet, they shift their mood, they're clingy, they're poor self-esteem. There are children like that, language delay, self-destructive. Then you've got sexual abuse indicators as well, which are things like, that the child is using inappropriate sexual languages, a poor environment, the specific anxiety, bedwetting, weight loss, any sort of medical issues, drawing, or so there are elements of that affect the child. How children disclose, and this is a hard thing, not all children will disclose, that they find it difficult to open up. But if you try to, open up with a child, it may be something that they've accidentally said. There may be indirect disclosure, there may be acting on experiences drawn on toys, or, all of a sudden they change. Delayed disclosure, retraction may say something and then they retract it. You can test the child and try and get something out of that. Assessment criteria 4.4, actions to take on allegation. So you've got responding to disclosure, step by step. So stay calm. It's really important to stay calm. Listen to the child closely, and believe them, and do not panic. Do not ask any leading questions as well. And don't promise any sort of confidentiality, and reassure them that, you're right, what you're saying. Don't criticize them, and, so don't promise them things as well. What not to do, critical mistakes. Do not interrogate, keep asking promises. Don't, don't say that you're going to keep it a promise, because you can't. Stop detailing questions, never force details, let the child speak voluntarily. Do not investigate, do not confront any sort of alleged perpetrator, and do not delay. Tell the DSL, and do not paraphrase things as well, and don't put things into your own hands. If you can, record everything within the hour. Make sure written recording is made to capture anything that the child's told you, their experience, any sort of, it serves as a vital piece of evidence for safeguarding and protection proceedings. And schools have CPOMs, so officially put everything on there, the time, the date, sign it, and do not share, or just with the DSL authorised person. Task applied a scenario task for the case of Jordan. It's just a scenario of Jordan's presentation, which you can have a look at in your own time, and mapping indicators in regards to Jordan's situation, and then some actions you can take for Jordan. Assessment 4.5, the rights of children in safeguarding and carers. So it's in safeguarding context, protecting a child means keeping them safe from any sort of harm, and respecting their rights as well. Under Article 12, children have the right to express their views. Under Article 19 of the UNHCR, children have the right to protection of all sorts of violence. So it's really important that you are identifying these rights for them. Then you have rights of parents due to their rights of carers and parents. They are treated, make sure they are right. Parents have the right to be informed if they have any concerns raised at the school. If there's anything in place, you have a right to inform them, and referral is made to the designated safeguarding lead or social care. Parents have to attend a meeting, a conference, and parental responsibility have the legal rights under Children Act. Parents can seek legal advice and contest decisions. Um, Balancing rights when there are conflicts. So in health and safety, when there are conflicts, the right to protection takes priority over child's rights. So, you need to take into account the welfare list under the Children's Act, Section 1, 1989. It doesn't eliminate the parents' right, but it gives them to protect the children's safety. The European Convention on Human Rights, Article 8, is the right to respect for family and private rights. So you have the right to respect that individual's rights, and you have to take into account and hear what the child has to say. How serious case reviews inform practice. So serious case reviews are formally termed as a safeguarding practice review, and it's a local multi-agency investigation, and it's triggered when a child dies or suffers serious harm through known or suspected abuse or neglect. And the fundamental purpose is to examine interagency communication, uncover systematic flaws, and apply critical lessons to protect vulnerable children. So, they have to look at making sure that all the gaps have been met, and making sure that they review everything and different agencies, and make sure there are not any sort of errors in place, and the systematic errors are not in place, and try to combat any sort of information blockages between any agencies. Key reviews that shaped modern practice. We had the Maria Conwell case, who died at age 7, killed by stepfather. She was 7 years old, killed by stepfather after being returned to her biological mother. The inquiry exposed critical communication breakdowns between the housing department, social services, school, and the police. Victoria Clembe, as we've been through, is regards to who died at age 8 of severe abuse. Baby P, another one, Peter Connolly. Again, he was the element of abuse and died at 17 months. You've got the Daniel Pelker. This was the element of died at age 4 in Coventry after abuse and starvation. Arthur Laminjo died at 6 in Solihull during COVID. And then Star Hobson as well, the girl that I was talking about, died in Bradford, reviewed alongside Arthur. And it was thematic findings as a response by extended family members. Then you had Logan Mawagi, died in 5 in Wales. Sarah Sharif, quite a recent one, died in 10 in Surrey. And then each review has to be taken into account. We've got the another one is called the Moncton Report, which is the death of the 12-year-old who was killed by her foster father. So there's a lot of these reports in place in regards to how they've been dealt with. How serious case reviews inform daily practice. So you've got the national learning, so the CSPR panel, which deal with publishing any annual reports, and every designated safeguarding lead should read these to translate. So local learning, safeguarding boundaries, training, updates, policy revisions, research and common themes for staff development and for teaching assistants, reading, review, remind, keep you vigilant on any sort of policies and procedures. This is the case of Arthur Lambinjo Hughes and what schools learned. This was a case of a student who was, it was alongside Star's case as well, and it was abuse by concerns raised in lockdown. It was the impact of the family members that didn't take into account elements of, how they treated him and how he died in regards to that. Theoretical assessment triangle in regards to elements of serious crime, is that it's a framework it protects, places the child at the center of the triangle, and it protects that child's developmental needs. So it could be things like your health, it could be your education, emotional needs. And it is the element of that is to make sure that they ensure that the child's safety is put in place, and it's paramount throughout. Activity in learning outcome 3, 4, you can do in your own time. Further reading and resources and references there for learning outcome 3. Learning outcome 4. Do you have any questions on learning outcome 4?
No, no.
Thank you. Let me stop sharing that and go back to the last one, which is learning outcome. Let's go. So learning outcome for 5. It's the next one. So learning outcome 5, they are very detailed slides, and I'm just going through them quite quickly so we can get on to. So let's just, if there's any questions you need to ask, just ask away, okay? So learning outcome 5 is to understand how to work with children and young people to support any sort of well-being. So what we'll be looking at is AC 5.1, 5.2, AC 5.3, AC 5.4 here. Why well-being matters. It's really important. Well-being matters in UK school because it combats, severe youth mental health crisis and directly threatens academic success, student safety, and teacher retention as well. So, making sure their mental health is referred to for CAMS, making sure that if there's any issues in anxiety, depression, it's been, identified. The mental health landscape is for young people is really big at the moment. Making sure that their mental health is secure. 1 in 5 children and young adults aged 8 to 25 have mental health issues, and it keeps increasing all the time. Things like self-harm, depression, ADHD, suicide, and proactive factors like physical activity, things like that. Assessment criteria 5.1, building self-confidence and self-esteem. Self-confidence and self-esteem are closely related yet distinct psychological concepts. Self-confidence reflects your belief in the ability to succeed in a specific task, so making the child feel more self-confidence. And then self-esteem is the foundation for self-confidence and enables any sort of actions. So, focusing on being and existing, making sure they are rely on core beliefs and their values, and growing kindness and acceptance. Building self-esteem for children, making sure that teaching assistants can build self-esteem for students by using positive praise, offering small, setting achievable goals, and listening as well. It's really important, praising them, letting them learn themselves and helping them, giving them responsibilities and creating a safe space. Building self-confidence, so making sure they're breaking down tasks, making sure that they are allowing safe failures, praising them, assigning them jobs, giving them choice, opportunities to learn, and public success. The relationship approach, making sure that you've put in place is interconnecting rather than isolating. So well-being is built on making sure they're seen, they're heard, they're valued, making sure that they are, the nurturing principles in place, making sure that people, the foundation, shaping their emotional health, neurological development, and personal resilience. So making sure they're emotionally regulated, identifying any sort of validating them and helping them have a stable sense of belief. Identity, belonging, and belonging and self-esteem. So identity, belonging, and self-esteem are connected. A child's identity is who they are inside, including their traits, culture, and values. Belonging is where they fit and feel safe with others. And self-esteem grows when a child feels valued for being themselves in their community. So identifying their cultural identity, their, if they've got any send identity, their family configurations, accepting things, creating a safe space for them. The role of support staff in recognising mental health concerns, that's its AC 5.2. So support staff and teaching staff, make sure they are, being able to notice, respond, and report any sort of concern. You're not expected to diagnose anything. If there's any sort of behavioural issues, any mood swings, emotional indicators, you need social withdrawal. You need to report that any concerns to the safeguarding lead, and then continue to maintain your own well-being and observe them as well. The senior mental health lead is a strategic role championed by the UK government, oversees a coordinated whole school approach to mental health, and its responsibility is to coordinate with the CAMS. It may be with external organisation, and it's there works alongside the safeguarding lead if there's any mental health issues. Works alongside other members of senior leadership, and make sure that they are regularly monitoring and evaluating any sort of elements of it. When mental health becomes a safeguarding issue, um, is when a person's life is put at risk, and if there's immediate danger as well, and there is, if there's any sort of suicidal issues or self-harm issues as well as self-neglect. AC 5.3 signs of possible mental health concerns. Mental health concerns. It could be someone who's normally really chatty, someone who's got mood swings, maybe sudden high lows, eating habits, socially withdrawn, someone who's feeling down, empty. It may be physical signs, it may be behavioral signs, it may be someone who's feeling exhausted, someone who's not attended, someone who's not doing well in their work as well. It could be, they are trouble focusing, remembering things, breathing. So specific signs, you've got anxiety on depression, you've got things like, which they feel excessive worry all the time. It could be they feel like they're not, breathing properly. They're anxious about things. They've got they are, feeling separated. Depression is their mood swings, it could be their behavior, it could be their outbursts, it could be feeling tired, it could be their appetite, poor concentration, social withdrawal. Frequent further specific conditions can be other eating disorder. Eating disorders can be another one, weight loss, or unusual weight gain, skipping meals, frequent trips to the toilet, wearing baggy clothes, fine hair loss, fainting, dizziness, self-harm, unexpected cuts, wearing long sleeves in hot weather, using sharp items. Trauma responses in children. So trauma responses in children, behavior like anger or shutting down, or it could be kids like ADHD acting up, aggression, yelling. It could be behavior, it could be emotional signs, it could be physical signs, it could be, the tired, changes in eating, age-related signs of distress. So this could be children who act out. It could be mental health issues. It could be regression, bedwetting, thumb sucking. These are different adolescents and different ages are just listed there. 5.4 is developing emotional resilience. And then you look at elements of emotional resilience and what it is. It's the mental ability to adapt to stressful situations, bounce back, recover from any hard times and any emotional balances. It does not mean that you feel any sort of pain or anything. Instead, it means you process through feelings and move forward. And managing, staying calm and your feelings instead of panicking, and making sure that you're calm and resilient, and take a few minutes to step back and focus on your breathing and treat yourself with kindness. Building resilience. So what works in schools, so building this element of a secure base, helping students bounce back, effective approaches on safe environments, strong adult relationships, viewing mistakes, peer support, emotional literacy, making sure you have ensuring this trusting relationship, building an element of a safe space, providing quiet areas, creative and physical outlets, mindfulness, well-being in curriculum. In regards to well-being, it's really important because it's all part of the curriculum, is embedded into it, teaches children emotional literacy, mental health, and teaching a system to support this by modelling positive interactions, running targeted small group interventions, facilitating any sort of emotional check-ins, and helping students navigate social conflicts in real time. Your daily role in building resilience. So making sure that you build this resilience, keeping this place safe, and you grow this. Making sure you have small actions like pausing to breathe and physical health. Making sure you have this space for emotions, teaching young children regulating with adults, making sure they're calm, celebrating small steps, building social bridges, supporting them, breaking down goals, and making sure that you are, writing down their good points as well. A whole school approach, um, public health, England, promoted school mental health. So, making sure that you're including staff, students, governors, parents, and making sure you're building this safe cultural environment stops any sort of enabling student voice, staff development, making sure staff are trained, making sure they are also identifying any sort of monitoring needs, working with parents and targeting any support. Looking after your own well-being is really important as a teaching assistant. You need to make sure you're looking after yourself as well, making sure you have, you have the space for yourself as well. And even though the children come first, you need to self-care as a requirement, making sure if you're struggling, taking breaks, supervision, peer support, making sure the boundaries in place, and making the basics, sleep and eat properly as well. Referral pathways, so where to go for help. So you could refer people to the first post contact, DSL, pastoral team, school counsellors, learning mentors, external organisations, GPs, CAMS, crisis routes as well, private services, counselling, therapy, proactive factors for mental health, secure relationships, school belonging, the feeling of being part of the community, consistent routines, make sure you have physical activity in place, managing classroom transitions, supportive, acting as a trusted, non-judgmental, vulnerable, sleep, nutrition, family support, make sure these are factors that are considered. This is a case study about someone called Naomi that you can look at in your own time. And the theoretical framework they've used here is the George Ennell one, which is in regards to the biopsychosocial model, as response is a purely biological model of illness. So you looked at biological factors, psychological factors, social factors, and mental health. And this is an activity that you could do in your own time. And further reading on Learning Outcome 1 and references there on Learning Outcome 1 to, Learning Outcome 5. Okay, so stop sharing that, and I will share so I'll just share the assignment with you so you know what it looks like, and it's available on Moodle for you. And then we'll go into the assignment discussion. So I think this is the assignment brief. So this is the assignment brief, okay? This is what it looks like on Moodle. So you could have a look at that. And then we'll go through the slides. So this is how it looks on Moodle for you, okay? It gives you the tasks, the qualification, and what you are expected to do in each task. So you've got task 1, task 2, task 3, and task 4, and task 5. Okay, and this looks at sort of the assessment criteria, and this is a record for the assessor. Okay, so this is how it's graded, and this information is available for you online. Okay, is that okay, Christina?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one I want to share is the element of the actual slides themselves. So let's look at this assignment discussion. Understanding, what's this? Understanding outcome 2. So this is the assignment discussion. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the assignment discussion. We'll go through guidelines for you, that what is expected of you, and then we'll go through the tasks to do. So assignment discussion, understand how to safeguard children and young people. About this unit, the unit is called How to Understand Children and Young People. The reference is M616580 and the level is level 3 and guided learning hours 15. And this is just about the unit. The unit summary is provided understanding to require and promote the welfare of children and young people, and it covers legislation recognizing abuse, responding to concerns and disclosures, and school policies and procedures. This assignment has 3 tasks. No, I think it has 5, which is showing me 5.
Yeah, it does.
5 tasks, not 3 tasks. So, have you got the one that we'll go through the declaration and stuff, and then we'll go through that 5 tasks. So learning outcomes.
Yeah, on the website, on
Moodle, it's the 5 tasks, isn't it?
That's 5 tasks, yeah.
Yeah. So submission, where and how, in what format. So you've got the emotional submission is via email. You send your completed assignment to learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk. If you have any questions around that, you need to email them. Use a clear email line, so you could put the unit code in. The file format and submit as a single Word document or PDF, and the name file is your name. Layout and presentation is Arial or Calibri, size 11 or 12, 1.5 line spacing, page numbers in footer, and your name and unit code in header. Include a cover page with your full name, unit code, unit title, submission date, and word count. Include a contents page if the assignment has multiple tasks. And what to include in the submission: you need to include a signed declaration, all tasks labeled, Harvard referencing at the end, and appendices. Now, declaration of authenticity, and this is to declare that the work you've submitted, Christine, is your work. You've not copied, you've not plagiarized, you've not used AI, and it is all your work, and that you have referenced everything properly. Okay, so this has to be submitted with all assignments, and it's non-negotiable. Harvard referencing is the one that is used at UK Varsity, and here is how you would reference using Harvard references. For example, it gives credit to the author. In text, there is a website that you could use to help you as well, Christine. It's called Neil's Toolbox, and that would identify where you'd put the author's name, the year of the book, and then you'd put the organization, the book name, the publishers, and the place, and that is Harvard referencing. Okay, and that is really good. Have a look at it. There's different sites online, Cite Me and Neil's Toolbox. So Harvard references list, formats by source. You'd have a book, you'd have the journal. If it's a book, it's social learning, and then it gives you the details. If it's a book of 2 or more authors, journal articles, government publications, website, and Act of Parliament. That website that I've just mentioned will give you where to put all the dots and everything. Harvard references, the do's. Keep a running list of your sources as you read. It saves time. Use CiteMe, Zotero, or Mendeley to auto-generate references and put them in alphabetical order by author's name. Use italics for book and journals, not for articles. Include access date for websites. They change. Cite DFSC, NCFE, Ofsted legislation explicitly, and reference each source you use, even if paraphrased. Don't copy a reference list from another source verbatim. Use footnote-style references, not a scholar. Quote, invent references to pad out your list. Tutors check. Quote more than 1 or 2 sentences without good reason. Reference Wikipedia as an academic source, and forget to cross-check and submit without a reference list. Don't do that. This is an expectations, okay? So this is academic writing, making it hard. Command verbs, what each one actually wants. So every AC starts with a command verb. Map your writing style to what your combined words. So if it says identify, list, state, short answers, name the items, no explanation needed, 50 to 80 words is enough. A bullet pointed list is acceptable. Describe, outline, moderate answers, set out main features, factual, 100 to 150 words per AC. Use examples. When it tells you explain, it needs longer answers showing cause and effect. Give reasons, show how and why, 150 to 225 words, and link to practice or evidence. Analyze, evaluate, deep thinking, break down, compare, judge strengths and weaknesses, 225 to 400 words per AC, and support with evidence from multiple sources. Demonstrate, use, provide practical evidence, evidence of what actually you do, witness, testimony, work samples, reflections, not what I would do, what I did. Academic writing, what looks like at level 3, clear structure, intro, body phrase aligned to AC's conclusion. Signpost, this section addresses AC 2.1. Precise subject vocabulary, use the technical terms correctly, do not change the wording of the assignment. Evidence from multiple sources, legislation, theory, school policy. Paraphrase, not quote, shows understanding. Specific examples from your own practice. Anonymized and reflective commentary linked to reading. Reference list matching in text. Weak features, overquoting, don't overquote. Vague claims, generalization, don't, and use the narrative. Ignore the command verbs and explain. And personal opinion, do not put your personal opinion in. Structuring your assignment, use a clear structure, makes it easier to write. Cover page, your name, unit code and submission date. Contents page, list each task with the page, helps the assessor navigate what you've done. Introduction, if the task calls for one. Short, 50 to 100 words. Main body, task by task. Then a conclusion, and then reference list and appendices if need be. Task breakdown, the unit has 3 tasks, which I'm not going to go through because I'm going to share this and I'll move this. So stop sharing this. It's across here. So let me just share the task with you that I just shared earlier with you, so it's easier, so we can go through that. Because this it has 5 tasks and that doesn't, you see. So assignment brief is this one. Is this the one that you can see as well, Christine?
Yeah, I think
Can
so.
you see this? It says assignment brief.
Yeah.
Okay. So this assignment brief is the one and it's 5 tasks, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's go through the tasks. So your tasks, complete every task below. Each task is mapped to the learning outcomes and assessment criteria it covers shows in brackets. You must address every point so that all assessment criteria for each unit are met where the task is competence-based. Your evidence must come from your own practice in real learning environment, and simulation is not allowed for this task. So you would put this heading, task 1, safeguarding legislation fact sheet, okay? That covers learning outcome 1, AC 1.1, okay? Evidence is a fact sheet for the staff book. So you need to produce a fact sheet, okay? A fact sheet to be included in the staff handbook that outlines current legislation, guidelines, policies and procedures within home, nations affecting the safeguarding of children and young people. So what would we include in this kind of stuff? Would we look at the legislation that we looked at in learning outcome 1?
I guess so.
Yeah. So it could be things like the Equality Act. So for this task 1, you would need to look at learning outcome 1, AC 1.1.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's so much to put in.
Yeah, there is a lot, but it's not. It's what it's going to ask you for is it's going to ask you for the actual the tasks themselves. So you could, for example, you could. It's not. It's only a fact sheet. So you could look at the legislation in 1.1 on in learning outcome 1, and you could look at. I'll tell you which page you would be referring to for that. Let me just go back up. So that's learning outcome 1. You would be referring to page AC 1.1. So you would be referring to page 6. From page 6, 7, Children's Act, Children Act 2004, up to page, I think page 13, 14. It is a lot, but maybe try to minimize it. It is quite a lot. So maybe up to page 19. Maybe if you put everything quite briefly rather than too much detail. You know, it could identify a nice fact sheet. It doesn't actually say on there how many pages it has to be, does it? So
I'll try and make it. Yeah, because it's for the, if it's for
yeah,
the staff handbook, you don't.
yeah, like a fact sheet. Yeah, yeah. And then
So it says
the
outline. Yeah.
yeah. And then the next bit of it is to produce a fact sheet with that. And then task 2, put that as a heading. And that covers learning outcome 2, AC 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and 2.4. Here you're doing a written response, which is induction materials. The scenario is as part of your induction as a new member of staff, you have a session booked with your line manager where you have been asked to provide information that shows you can address the points below. So what I would do in this is I would have this as a heading and then write the answer under it. So explain the need to safeguard children and young people. And then I would have that as another heading. So there's 4 points to it. I would have each one as a heading and then write under each one. That would be the best way to do that. And that would be on AC 2.1 and 2.1 up to 2.4. So you'd look at page 4 up to page 4 onwards on learning outcome 2, up to page just up to page 27 for that one, for that task. So you'd look at explaining the need to safeguard children and young people, then explain the impact of children or young people on a person-centered approach, and then explain what is meant by the partnership working in the context of safeguarding, and describe the roles and responsibilities of 3 different organisations that be involved. So it could be the police, it could be social services, it could be schools, any 3 organisations. And each one, I would put that and then write under that as an answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Task 3, online safety, safer internet. Here it covers learning outcome 3, 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4. Here you'd have to do a presentation plus a handout. So your school, college is taking part in Safer Internet Day again this year, with workshops in information packs, notice boards, and activities being arranged for children and young people, parents and carers, and school staff. What you need to do, you need to plan a presentation for teachers to use different audience, which explains why we need to ensure children and young people are protected from harm within the learning environment. In the presentation, you need to identify the risks and possible consequences for children and young people being online and using digital mobile devices, and describe 2 ways of reducing risk to children and young people from social networking. So that is the first part of it. Then the second part of it, you need to develop a handout used alongside with the presentation, which explains how to support staff and can take steps to protect themselves within their everyday practice. And that is learning outcome 3, 3.1, 3.2. Let me just have a look which learning outcome that one is. Learning outcome 3, and you will be looking at pages. So you look at page 4 onwards, up to, for both the presentation and handout, up to page up to page 27. for task 3. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Have you got any questions there, Justine?
No.
No, okay. So let's go back on to them. Sorry, I'm going back and forth. Responding, task 4 is the next one, responding to concern. And here you're looking at learning outcome 4, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, and 4.5. And this is a scenario, Jordan's scenario. So Jordan, you need to do a written response here. Jordan is 5 years old and attends the local primary school. Jordan lives at home with his dad and 2 older siblings. Jordan has never been punctual and is frequently collected late. Attendance has not been a cause for concern. For the past few years, Jordan has been waiting at school entrance very early in the morning and is collected by other parents of his older brother and at the end of the day, with permission from Jordan's dad. Staff have noticed changes in Jordan's appearance and behavior, usually quiet and calm and managing transition well. He now often presents challenging behavior, becoming inconsolable as he arrives in class. Jordan regularly appears unwashed, wears the same clothes all week, and is often without his packed lunch. As a teacher assistant, you are concerned. The class teacher is not overly concerned and has told you everything will be okay. Don't worry, you are worried and needs intervention. So what you need to do is you need to explain this. Explain child protection within the wider context of safeguarding, identify different types of abuse, outline the possible signs in concern and describe the actions, and then explain the rights of the children. So there's 5 bits. Each part you need to write separately, and you need to put the answer under that. Okay, and for this you need to be looking at learning outcome 4, and you need to be looking at pages. Need to be looking at page 3 up till page 3 up till page they have got stuff on Jordan here, so up to page it's page 31, and each of the answers for that will be on that one. So you need to make sure you're looking at that. Okay. Any questions on learning outcome 5?
Nope.
Oh, sorry. Let's just go on to the next one. The assignment, where's this? So, oh God, I've gone on to the wrong thing now. Okay. So task 5 is here. It's serious case reviews. Here you're looking at learning outcome 4, 4.6. So after that, what we've just looked at, you look at after the pages on serious case. So we've looked at page 31, was it?
Yeah, that's what you said. Yeah.
After 31 is 32, and it's all on serious case reviews. And it's learning outcome 4. Here you are, it's a scenario, and it is a staff development week at your secondary school. Excuse me. And all staff are expected to deliver a short session on subject-related safeguarding children and young people. This will inform all staff CPD and be included on professional development. You need to undertake some research, explain how serious case reviews inform practice. And that is learning outcome 4, AC 4.6 towards the end. So that's what you'll be looking at in that. The last one is task 6, which is supporting wellbeing radio script. And that covers learning outcome 5, AC 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4. Evidence a script for radio broadcast. Here, you are a member of the support team at a large community college, and in your spare time, you undertake voluntary work for a local charity supporting positive mental health and well-being in young people. The college has planned a mental health awareness week to coincide with national promotions, and local radio has approached you to record a recording and supporting children and young people's well-being. You need to develop a script for a radio broadcast which identifies the signs of possible mental health concerns in children and young people. In the script, you need to describe the role of support staff in recognizing the signs of mental health concerns in young people and and children. You need to describe 3 ways in support staff can work with young people to build confidence and self-esteem. And you need to explain the need to work with young people and children to enable them to develop emotional resilience and mental health. For this, you need to look at learning outcome 5. Okay, and you need to be looking at pages 3 onwards to page 5.2, 5.2 up to 5.4. So you need up to 5.1 up till page 30.
Okay.
Okay, so for each of these tasks, you've got 6 tasks. Identify each task at the start and have the headings. Make sure you don't change any of the wordings of the task. Make sure you're following the task and using examples as well, and make sure you're not renaming any of the tasks. Okay, also make sure you've got your cover page at the start of it all, and it's in one document, and it's a Word document, and you've got your declaration of authenticity, you've got a contents page, and make sure each task is labeled and you're using Harvard referencing and page numbering everything. All the support is available for you on learnerwork at ukvarsity.co.uk. You can ask your assessor if you struggle, if you need any support, admin support, student support. Email admin@ukvarsity.co.uk. Any deadline extensions and technical support, you must submit your work on learner work at ukvarsity.co.uk. And obviously submission is just you need to make sure you have submitted the declaration. Also, avoid using AI. There is a threshold of below 20%, but try to avoid using AI. And make sure you check your grammar and you use UK English commands and UK grammar. If you need an extension, again, before the deadline, email admin@ukvarsity.co.uk, and make sure you are, if you're struggling, email them as well, because it is a professional qualification, and you need to make sure you are following the requirements of NCFE as well. Have you got any questions on each of the tasks or anything?
Well, I did find, I think it was in the previous thing that you were looking at, because there was stuff like generally doing tasks that, because I don't think I've seen that, but it tells you
that is available on Moodle. Is it the assignment discussion with the 3 tasks on?
Yeah, what the different verbs mean.
Yeah, the verbs are the command verbs that you need to be referring to. They are all available on Moodle for you.
Oh, are
okay. So when it tells you to evaluate, analyze, it needs more detail. When it tells you to describe something, it's less detail. So you need to look at the command verbs. They're all available on Moodle for you.
Okay.
But you need to make sure you are doing each task as it requires and what it's asking you, rather than, putting everything in. Read the task carefully, concentrate on what the task is asking you, and, identify it's task 1 and you're doing this, then identify it's task 2. Make sure you put headings in, and in the contents page what task each one is on. It's a lot of work, but I think you'll be okay with it, because it's all in the slides, and you need to make sure you are adhering to PowerPoint slides, handbooks, and things like that. And also make sure you're using Harvard referencing as well. That's really important.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions, Christine?
I think no, I think I'm all right.
Sure. If you have any questions or anything, just email learnerwork@ukvarsity.co.uk, and they will, kind of confirm anything for you. But I know that we've had to go through the learning outcomes quite quick, but at least you've got an idea of where everything is as we've gone through the there's tasks as well. So it'll give you a little bit of a more of a better approach at trying to get on with the tasks now.
Yeah, you must be very tired after all that.
I am. I'm actually off work. I teach for a different institution. I'm off for 5 weeks, but I'm helping them out. So yeah, I am tired today, but it's one of those things.
That's a lot of talking.
Anyway, thank you for today. It was lovely meeting you, lovely teaching you, and good luck with getting on with the assignment.
Thank
Any
you.
questions, email them, okay?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Thank you.
And
Bye.